TJ, were you just talking muted?
Yes.
I thought so.
I have my wrong graphic in the media pool, and I didn't feel like messing with it, but I won't be distracting.
That's fine. I just was worried that my audio somehow stopped
Oh, no.
working, or there were any bombs to make sure they don't go off as we start the show.
I will fade away.
Wait, that's not where you are.
Talking while muted. Oh.
Know what they say? That's two mixed pre's into the mixed pre back.
I did that on Monday.
It's kind of like drinking while driving. Two talking while mutings.
Talking while muted?
They take away your podcast license after a while.
Yes, that's right. You're going to have to get reaccredited.
I think it's a rite of passage, though. Everybody does it.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Here we answer your questions 7 days a week. Alexander, what's up first?
First question this morning is from Douglas Carmichael. When I adjust the preamp gain on my mixer, Allen Heath SQ5, there's a clicking noise as the gain is adjusted, even with no signal coming into the preamp. To mitigate this issue on noise-sensitive events, would you adjust preamp gain when pre-fader beforehand?
What do you think, Alexander?
Well, it should not be doing that. And I'd be curious if it's happening only on one channel or all the channels. But no, I have used a lot of digital mixers in my days, and from all brands, Allen Heath, Behringer, Midas, and PreSonus, and a lot of other companies, Yamaha, and they don't make clicking noises. So I would contact Allen Heath. They have a good support team. I did a quick search beforehand on the show, and I have seen some reports of, and I don't know if it's the exact same issue, but noise when adjusting preamp gain, but they should absolutely not do that.
Courtney?
Yeah, you might have some DC on that input as you turn that first gain control. This is before the A to D conversion. If you hear the noise only when you're turning the pot, it could be a dirty pot or a dirty some I'm not sure whether Allen Heath does this, do resistor steps that are switches. The input gain level is a switch rather than a pot, and that can be noisy once that thing gets a little bit corroded or old. Somebody smokes around it. Clean your input pots if you have access to them and if they're not sealed. Otherwise, you might check for DC on that input. It could be the capacitors in that preamp. That first preamp, the decoupling capacitors that keep the DC from a 48-volt phantom from leaking back into the preamp, maybe going bad and leaking a little bit of DC in there, and that DC makes noise as you turn the pot. So yeah, hitting the pre-fade listen so that it's not going out over the bus, over your mix bus when you're adjusting it, and hopefully where you let it sit, there's not a lot of high resistance there, and it doesn't crackle or make noise once you have it set before the A to D converters.
Jonas?
I agree that you should do it in beforehand. If you do it in PFL or if you do it live on air, not live on air, like on the PA, what's really important is your preamp is the first step where you should be leveling out the sound. So when you start with your sound check, the preamp is the first step in your gain staging to make sure that you have the appropriate input signal. So ideally, if you do that correctly, you don't need to change any preamp settings during the show and you won't have that issue. And honestly, if during the tech check you hear a couple clicks, that probably no one will be bothered by that. But the idea is that you first set up your preamp gain before you start your show, and it wouldn't matter that you have that clicking. And then during the show, you use the fader for that.
Alexander?
Yeah, Jonas covered it really well because Douglas, you're describing two problems. There's the potential hardware problem, the clicking noise, and then you asked about adjusting gain structure. So Jonas is correct. Pre-fade listen is what you want. Pre-fade basically just means that no matter where the fader is, you want to actually monitor the levels that are coming in, the true level signal that is coming in before any of the parts on that channel strip are actually affecting it. And that is absolutely, so you do your line check, right? Which is just like a quick check to make sure you have signal coming in. Oftentimes with bands, it's great to actually have the band perform. I actually really like to get the band to perform real quick, just get through a song, because you don't want to adjust things in a vacuum, individually all that much, because by the time the band plays, and you get the total sum of all the instruments level, everything's going to be way, way louder. And you do not want to make preamp adjustments during the show. So get that right during line check and sound check, and then you shouldn't have any issues as long as the gain structure is set up correctly.
Next question.
This one's for me. Do you want to see the new Amaran Ace 25C light?
It sounds like a Cochran. Go ahead, Alexander.
Oh, it may be. This just arrived yesterday. After I saw Gerald and Dunn talking about this new light and how he was comparing it to the older MC Pro, which is quite a bit more expensive. This one is apparently more powerful and has some really cool features. There's a few different versions. The 25C is the one that does RGBW as well. The X model is just bicolor, but this is a really cool light. And in high output mode, this light can pump out an astonishing 35 watts, which I'm just absolutely stunned. It has a cooling fan. So far, in my tests, I haven't really heard it, but you can actually put it into a silent mode, which will affect the battery life. This rubberized pad here is magnetic, which is cool, which I think the MC Pro was magnetic as well, and you can attach it to things. And it, on the front, comes with this little accessory here. So you got this little dome diffuser as well, which is really cool. And I thought this was kind of a nice touch, but they include this magnetic snap, like this is the stand mount. And this thing, if you just push the little button here, this thing just, I had it reversed polarity. There we go. That just snaps on. So it makes taking it off the stand really quick and easy, which I really like. And I could probably just flip it on here.
Yeah,
There's
so if
also
you had a couple of those, you're not
Bluetooth
messing with
as well.
your cold shoe mount.
What was that?
Well, if you have a couple of them and you're worried about a battery life situation, you can just move those in and out and not have to worry about futzing with that little cold shoe mount every time. That's really nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it has a nice little LCD screen here, which is really easy to read. All the controls I find are very intuitive. It's got an FX mode as well. I don't know, it's fireworks. It's got all these crazy effects. I have barely touched all the settings here. But anyways, I just thought this was really cool, and it's quite affordable. I noticed the price went down on Amazon. In Canadian dollars, I paid $168 with tax for this. So I think this is really cool. They do have a kit version of this, which comes with a cool little tripod and a carrying case. I didn't see that available on Amazon at the time when I ordered it, but they do have a slightly more expensive model that has those accessories. So I just thought this was a really cool light with a high output. And also the other thing is if you put it into output mode, this can actually do reverse, like it'll send power out of this light over USB-C. So you can actually connect this to a phone and actually charge it off of this device as well, which is pretty neat.
Courtney?
I find it curious in their design concept of a light that's designed to be mounted right on top of the camera. Perhaps right next to the microphone would have a fan in it, especially if it's an LED light. I guess maybe they built it and they found that it was overheating or something and they had to put the fan in at the last minute. But it seems like kind of counterproductive to capturing good sound if you have a fan that's a couple of inches away from your microphone, if it's also mounted on top of the camera.
I mean, you don't really want a camera-mounted microphone, do you?
Well, you don't really want a camera-mounted light either, do you?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Next question.
From Ronnie Hofsø in Tromsø, Norway. How many concurrent streams can a single YouTube account be broadcasting at the same time? Is there any prerequisites or difference between different accounts? Is it enough that the account has the permission to stream live?
Samuel?
I don't think there's a hard limit, but what you have to do is set up multiple stream keys, and then you have to assign each of those stream keys to different events. But in my opinion, it looks kind of messy if you do a whole bunch of streams to one YouTube channel. If you're embedding it to a website, then it might be something different. But if you do a whole bunch of streams to one YouTube channel, then it can look kind of messy for the users. So what I like to do is set up separate channels for each stream.
Jonas?
Yeah, so it's important that you have the ability to live stream for at least 24 hours. That's one of the things that keeps biting people, that they're like, oh yeah, we can live stream on YouTube, but when you first request it, there's a 24-hour wait. And the other thing is, like Samuel said, you need to use events for that. Some people still use the Live Now feature, or however they rebranded it. It's the first in the live stream section where you just click go live and it creates a stream for you and everything. That is only one. So make sure that you have all the other live events and then have at it. Have as many streams as you want. Keep in mind that you probably want to make sure that you want to have the different input paths and all that pre-configured. And then, I have yet to see a limit of how many streams you can do at the same time, as long as they all have different stream keys.
Next question.
Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts, asking from the QR code, I'm building a studio and I want to introduce my contractor to the notion of floating the floor for soundproofing. Do you have a recommended link for information?
Alexander?
Yikes. I would not want to have to tell my contractor to learn how to do a floated floor. I would call someone and find somebody that actually has a lot of experience building that. To me, that would make me extremely nervous if someone's never done that. Acoustics are really critical, getting that right the first time in the studio. And when you're dealing with that, you want to find a specialist who is doing that. So, an acoustician, if you're going to design an actual room for recording in, or somebody to help you soundproof it, you want people that have experience with that. I wouldn't want to pay somebody to actually learn on the job to do that and figure out how to get it working.
Jason?
I mean, if you want to sell the client on it, my first thought is that we've done a couple second hours on floating spaces, and maybe just sit them down and have them look at a second hour that we've done. That's definitely not a bad place to start.
When I was building the room that I'm in right now, I had hired a contractor to build it, and I gave him the design. He and his team, I said, okay, I need a double layer, treat it like a sandwich. It's a double layer of drywall on the outside, and then put insulation, or then put the stud wall with insulation in between the studs, then put an air gap, and then, it's the same on both sides. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get an 8-inch wall, a 10-inch wall. They started when I wasn't here. And when I came on the second day to look at what they were doing, they had built the double layer drywall plus 3 inches of insulation, then a stud wall without any insulation in it, then a gap, then the same thing on the other side. I ended up with like a 16-inch wall, so I'm in like a cavern. And it was one of those things where I don't need to be in a vault, but I made the mistake of hiring someone that had never done it before. And so if it counts, you want somebody who's done this, maybe for years, and then that maybe your contractor has to sub it out to someone who has experience, because if you're really trying to soundproof a room and float it, you want someone with that life experience, and that they're not getting their first day jitters out on your project. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and just bear in mind, if it's a true floating room with the floor floating, elevated, and on shock absorbers, it can more than double the cost of building that room. So bear that in mind. And you do want to find a contractor that's, as Alexander has pointed out, or CJ has pointed out, that knows how to construct those and doesn't just kind of, make it up as they go along.
Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, how do production professionals manage client expectations and communicate realistic timelines, especially when dealing with pressure from demanding clients or institutions? What strategies can be used to effectively convey said accurate timelines?
Jonas?
I think there's the perfect clients of the world, and then there's messy clients, which is probably 98% of clients. Not because they don't want to do it, because they're messy, because they have other things to do, right? Doing this event is something that you're taking off their plate. So it's not something that they'll spend all their energy on in making sure you get all the information. Build that into your time estimates. Like, it drives me insane when I see a production company that as soon as the client changes a single thing, everything falls apart because they didn't plan for we call it the oh, by the way tax. Because a client will always come up and be like, oh, by the way, that caller now needs to come in through SIP. Oh, by the way, that guy is sick, so we actually need 2 more people to join from that place. So like in your budget, when you're quoting it, build in a buffer for that. Build in more time, build in more equipment. Like, it's the same rule that Alex says with his equipment, like, don't overuse it over 60%. If I do channel maps, if I do signal flow plans, you'll find, oh, by the way, lines on there. Because I know at some point I'm going to arrive on site and someone is going to say, oh, by the way, can we also get that channel, or can we also get that signal from production? So keep that in mind. And then I would say always buffer your estimates a bit. Like, make sure that even if there's a couple issues, you can still achieve the wanted outcome by the client by the date that you give them. And then if you're done earlier, great. I've yet to find a client who's like, wait, you told me it's going to take longer. Why are you done already? So I would say be honest about communicating that. And then also, we try not to say no to client requests, but also be very honest with them about what it impacts, right? Like, this will impact the stability of the show. This impacts your price. This impacts your timeline. Like, we have clients where they say, hey, can you do this? And we're like, sure. Tell us in the next 5 days and everything will be fine. And they tell us in 6 days. And then I have to go back and say, that now it's going to affect the timeline. The timeline is going to shift by 2. And make sure that if you have vendors, you have an open line of communication with your vendors and set them deadlines where this needs to be done by, and then cushion those by a couple days or a couple hours or whatever your unit is, to make sure you have protected them also from client changes. Like, if a vendor won't build it into your quote and make sure that you have the space for it. But like, never run at 100% and never give the client this will take me 3 hours. It'll be done by EOD. And my favorite joke about this and making sure that the communication is clear is everybody thinks when I say EOD, they think of end of day, but I really think it stands for end of December. So I have a lot of more time there.
Courtney?
Yeah, sometimes before Christmas. Yeah, the communications is important between the client and the production company. And it's always a pet peeve of mine where they're secretive or they're not doing their job. Typically the client, especially in advertising, you ask them, they book you, are you available on this date? Well, yeah. And okay, we're going to do a commercial, great. Can you send me the storyboards, I'll say. And they go, well, we're still working on them. They haven't been finalized yet, so we don't want to release them before they're finalized. And you keep pestering them to deliver you the storyboards so that you know what you're going to be facing, as a production person, like if you're a sound person, you want to know, well, how many people are in this commercial? Are they talking to each other? Are they talking to the camera? Is it, where is it located? Is it in a hangar at an airport, or is it, on a sound stage? Is it, where are we shooting? And a lot of times the clients are reticent to release that information before everybody has signed off on it. So you have no clue as to what you're going to be faced with, and at the last minute you say, oh, well, the first day we're shooting at the beach, 500 yards down the sand from the parking lot. And you're going, well, now I've got to figure out how to get all my, 300 pounds of equipment across loose sand to the shooting location, and you're not prepared. So the best way to prepare is to build in timelines and to give deadlines to clients that say, I've got to have the script by this date if you want me to be if you want things to come out smoothly. If you give us the script at the last minute, we'll do the best we can, but we can't guarantee anything because we can't be sure that we showed up with the correct equipment to do what you need, because we have to have that information in advance. So get as much information out of the client as you can in advance, and hope and pray that they don't change their mind at the last minute. Oh, we had a creative organization, on the way to the shoot this morning, we came up with a whole new concept.
Jason?
We're going to shoot it in the dark. Yeah.
This comes back to that maxim, stop letting people surprise you. It is up to you whether or not people surprise you. You have plenty of time and plenty of resources if you recognize that if the same person did the same thing every single time, it's up to you whether or not you're being surprised. So yeah, just build in the buffer that's necessary and you won't be surprised, and neither will they.
And I'll wrap on this one with a piece of wisdom that was given to me at some point about managing, either managing expectations or dealing with demanding or clients who are putting pressure on you. We often will say, or you've heard someone say, well, treat others the way that you want to be treated, and that's going to get you by. That's actually, I think, pretty misguided. You should treat others the way they would have you treat them. So you need to put yourself in the shoes of the other individual on the other side of the organization, the other side of the table, and don't think about how you would want to be treated in that situation. Have empathy, put yourself in their shoes, and everyone's going to be different. But unless you're thinking about it from their perspective, you're going to find that there's frustrating communication gaps. If you have questions, you can get them in front of the panel here using Makana. There you can also vote on the questions, discuss them with others. If you don't have Makana, then you can sign up at officehours.global/join, and then you'll start getting emails with links to Makana, Discord, what's coming up on the show. If you don't want to sign up, you can always submit your questions at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. Doesn't require any login or sign up, and we'll work those questions into the next few shows. Let's keep rolling. Alexander?
This one's from the QR code. Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I teach remotely on Zoom with colleagues that have limited tech savvy. I want to pin their video and record it on my end in as high quality as possible. Is ScreenFlow the best way to do that?
David?
Francis, you certainly can do it that way. I wouldn't suggest it because screen capturing is never going to be as high quality as a native recording. So I think there are really two options. The first is if you need to do the recording, you can do a cloud or a local record directly through Zoom, and you can save it to your computer. For even higher quality, though, if it's possible to ask the person who you need to record to do the local record on their side and then send it to you, that's going to be the best quality.
The double ender. Go ahead, Jonas.
One thing to keep in mind, if they do it on their side and you need only them, they need to pin themselves, because otherwise you would get an active speaker if you have a conversation with them, and then they won't see themselves anymore. So that might be part of the issue. Since you asked for the best way, I think there's a couple ways. There's the cloud or local record. Be sure to go into the settings for those, especially the cloud sometimes has a timestamp on it. And if you need clean video and you don't want a bunch of screen debris, make sure that you go in there, disable all that. The other thing is, depending on your Zoom account, you may be able to do up to 1080p video. At that point, what I would do is use, there's a plethora of apps now that can, within themselves, pull in a Zoom feed and record it. There's Mimo Live on the Mac. There is vMix now can do it. And there's a whole bunch of others. There is even services that allow you to record it automatically. But also, and then the next step kind of is where we leave everything is contained in one app space. You would use something like Zoom Rooms or Zoom ISO to get a feed out that is SDI, NDI, or something like that, and then record it in there. So those are kind of your options, and then you kind of just have to decide trade-offs. Is it really depending on what you're doing, is it worth it to do that? And then one thing I would also make sure to keep in mind is not only the tech quality, but the quality of the conversation or the piece that you're recording. We often have people that say, well, we can push the client more to do X, Y, Z, and but at the end, the speakers are completely uncomfortable because they had to install 3 new things and they are uncomfortable with some setting and everything. So make sure that you make it easy and make them able to still present in the way that they need to. And then you're going to have a great time. But even without being tech savvy, you can still take a stack of papers and lift the camera a little bit, take a fiber cloth and clean your lens, make sure they have headphones. There's still a lot of simple things you can do to improve the quality even without improving your recording setup. So I would look at the whole process and just have a look what makes sense for you there.
Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. With just a single Pro account, a new option to acquire the higher resolution 1080p feeds in Zoom will soon be available to the masses. What has been quietly announced?
David?
So last week on Zoom Test Kitchen, some of our friends over across the pond noticed that you could now get business accounts for one person. You could buy a single user business account. We all got terribly, terribly excited that perhaps that would be coming stateside. It hasn't yet. They test different models in different regions, so we don't know if that's actually going to come. As a piece of that, many of us were hopeful that, 1080p for everyone. That's not what happened. What did happen is Zoom announced that if you now have an event subscription, a Zoom event subscription, you can now get 1080p, and you don't have to ask for it. It'll just be turned on by default. Now, this doesn't include those of us who are taking advantage of grabbing all the Liminal apps by having a PPA, a price per attendee sessions license, which is only $100 a year. You do that, and you get access to all the Liminal apps. This is not part of that. You do have to have an event subscription, which essentially the minimum subscription is about $1,000 a year. So if you are a content creator and you absolutely need 1080p in Zoom, or even if you're not a content creator but you need that, this will save you about half, because before, in order to get it, you had to have a business account, which is a minimum of 10 accounts, which is approximately $2,000. So for $1,000, you can now get 1080p on your own personal account as long as you have a Zoom Events subscription.
Alexander?
Yeah, there was a lot of information that was posted in Discord by Andy Carlucci, and I was trying to make, because there's a bunch of other Zoom services that I don't really use, so didn't know about the acronyms. But it's really interesting, and I don't know if this is just Canada, but when I go to zoom.us, I do notice now on the plans comparison page, I can now choose to buy a Zoom Workplace Business account, and with one, it says only one license is required, and it's $30 a month Canadian dollars, or $24.99 a month if you do the annual plan. That never, as of a couple of weeks ago, the last time I checked it, it would require that, what was it, a minimum 5 or 10 licenses, which is a lot of money for someone like me who's just a podcaster. So this is going to make things a lot more attainable for a lot of content creators that don't have the kind of budgets, that couldn't justify spending thousands of dollars every year for Zoom. So it's incredible.
David?
Yeah, it's you're one of those folks. I guess it's not just across the pond, but you're one of those lucky folks that has access to that, Zoom business account for only one person. Here in America, at least where I am, it's still $10 to $250. They're also introducing Pro Plus plans in some regions and Business Plus plans, which are not available currently in my part of the world.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. Earlier this year, they came out with there was some sort of Zoom Events license that made it look like you could get 1080 if you only had a single account. And then I was, after I bought the annual plan, I was a little bummed because I could only get 720, and I still had the 10 user limitation. But when I was going back, and they intimated that it was coming, and so it sounds like this is finally coming out. Very exciting stuff. Thank you, Guy, for sending that in. Next question.
From Rion Smith in Trinidad, West Indies, Insta360 is having a new camera update / launch October 22nd. Is anyone excited?
Samuel?
Yeah, I watched the teaser video, and it looks like it's a action camera in a GoPro form factor with a flip-up screen. So they already have some of these before, but it looks like it's probably a new model they're launching. So I'm sure it'll be good. I think Insta360 links or Insta360's market is largely action cams and 360 cams more than webcams. So it looks like that's what it's action cam this time.
Courtney?
Yeah, since they do 8K on their 360 cam, their 360-degree cam, this action cam could be 8K. Maybe that's what they're jumping up to. And if you look at the teaser trailer, what are they making, a fireproof version? I don't know. I don't know very many LCD screens that could endure fire and or cold and rain, So we'll have to see when it comes out if it's really fireproof or not. You can use
it's just hot off the presses.
Yeah. Preto could use it, attach it to the side of his next rocket that goes up, and see how well it fares.
Next question.
This question's from me. Is it common to ask for a retainer when someone approaches you to do production work?
Jonas?
I would say it depends on what type of production work. If it is something that you're gonna need to put investment of time or like block out parts of your month for X amount of time, yes, that's when I think a retainer makes sense. If it is for a one-off project, probably not. We just require a prepayment and then the half after the event is concluded. But we often had people who needed to know that even if we get busy, we still have space for them, right? And that's where a retainer makes sense for a show, like a weekly show, monthly show, whatever. They say, hey, let's put a retainer in. And I often don't even give a discount for that, because what we say is you prepay us, and for that amount of money, you can transfer it one billing cycle. So like if it's monthly retainer, you can change your hours to the next month, and then they are no longer usable and you still have to pay them. But where it really gets important is if someone wants to make sure that if you get super busy, you still carve out enough time for them. And it's also something important to keep in mind when you accept the retainer fee is now you need to structure your months in a way where you can guarantee when that client needs you, you are still available for them. So that's how I kind of see it, but it's common-ish for longer running projects especially.
Jason?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever accepted a time and a day without taking some sort of retainer. And as a rule, depending upon how the nature of the production, it's almost always paid prior to the moment that the production goes live. The idea of half beforehand and half afterwards is kind of obtuse in production. If you think about it, all of the resources need to be expended before you press live. And accordingly, I think the pay should be, on par with that.
Alexander?
Yeah, this question kind of dovetails nicely with that question I asked yesterday that I got into a kind of philosophical conversation with Bill about, because I've been thinking about a lot of my, I'm balancing right now a full-time job and I only have one client, and I feel like it's really time to start treating this like a real business instead of just a hobby. And some family members of mine think that I've been completely reckless and misguided to basically over the last 3 years take every drop of money that I've been making, which hasn't been actually that much from my client, and reinvesting it into all the gear that I need. And I've bought new cameras over the last few years to increase the quality of the production. My client never asked me for that. I just wanted to make things better, but I've gone into debt now, and I'm basically still trying to pay off all that gear, and I haven't really been turning a profit. So this is why I asked this question is, people are trying to convince me, well, you got to start asking for retainers. Like, you shouldn't have to shoulder the cost of building up all this gear. Like people get that I need the gear to do the job, but I've gone into debt to buy all this gear now and I have to pay it back.
Courtney?
I guess it really kind of depends, Alexander, on your interpretation of the word retainer. In the legal world, a retainer, if you have a lawyer on a retainer, means you're paying them a monthly fee, whether you have any business for them or not. So it's a fee that's paid to be on standby, to know that they will represent you if you have something that pops up unexpectedly. And in production, it can be very expensive to put somebody on retainer because they have to be able to, or if you're placed on retainer, you have to be able to service that client whenever that client comes up with work, which means you have to have enough depth of personnel and equipment to be able to handle 2 or 3 jobs at a time. Because if you have a competing job and the person who's paying you retainer says, oh, I've got an emergency shoot next week, we have a situation where we have to get to air quickly with this announcement, and you're booked, where does that leave you with your retainer? What Jason was talking about was really an advance payment, which I would do occasionally on clients that booked me, and they've never worked with me. I don't have a account with them. I will ask for an advance payment to hold. That way I will hold the days for them, and it will be only in the case of a booking. If they put me on hold, I can hold it, and I'll say you'll get a first hold. If I get a second challenge for that date, I'll come to you, and you can either book it and pay in advance, make a down payment on it, or you can let it go, and I'll book the other person. So if you don't have enough depth of personnel and equipment to handle multiple jobs at the same time, you have to deal with it like that on a job-by-job basis with holds and retainers for booking once it's actually booked. And if it's booked and then canceled, they have to pay a cancellation fee.
David?
I think a retainer really has a lot to do with someone being on call for you, as Courtney said. We have, for our high holy days in the temple that I work at, we use a vMix setup, which I know nothing about, and yet they've put me in charge of it. And we were talking this past year about having a vMix pro, someone from this community who really knows vMix, be on standby for us, basically paying them a retainer to be available to us should we have any questions or problems. We could jump on a call, or they could VPN in or something like that. That would be tremendous value to us to know that we could access someone if we needed to, and the expense, the cost would be appropriate, I think.
Jason?
I'm hesitant to speak for Alex, but he has more than once explained the way that he line items these things about equipment, and so I'll just reiterate that. The way that Alex does it is that he builds in the rental of every single event. He builds in the rental of the equipment, because honestly, if you are truly buying the equipment for the podcast, then you need the equipment. The cost that you're giving them, that you're asking for your time is your first line item, and your second line item is your equipment. And that equipment is being used every single time. And if they didn't want to make use of your time, they would still need the equipment. So it should be its own rental, and you should be renting it back to them at slightly less than the cost of going to any rental house and renting those cameras.
Yeah, the one thing you might not want to do is you can build the cost, the theoretical cost of the rental into your bid, but maybe not actually itemize it. I prefer a lump sum quote because it prevents folks from going in and nitpicking. Great points about the difference between, hey, this is going to be a retainer, which is really a way of saying I'm going to forsake other work so that I have capacity for you, and a down payment or a deposit, which is, hey, I need some upfront money to get started, get the equipment rented. Folks might be hesitant to pay you 100% upfront, because if they pay you all the money, then they have no leverage. This isn't a comment to you, obviously, but just in general, if I'm working with an independent contractor, I'm not going to pay them until the job is done, because how do I don't have a relation. If I don't have a relationship with them, I have nothing that's going to bring them to the day that I have them scheduled for. So, but the other thing that has been echoed a lot of times in the chat is that when you can rent the gear until you're able to go ahead and buy that, so that way you're not venturing off into something and taking on more than you can chew. Next question.
Next one's from Paul Wall, who's in Austin, Texas. Adobe has completed redesign frame.io. What are the use cases and costs for production?
Courtney?
Well, the use case, it's a collaboration platform that's designed for managing media. If you're producing something and you have to have a lot of people that have to sign off on it or take a look at it or look at your cuts or manage your media, like if your editor is editing somewhere else remotely and you have to be able to upload all your files from production to a cloud server where they can have access to them and they can look at thumbnails and can look at proxies to evaluate what you're shooting and make comments on them, and there's places for commentary and all that on it. They do have a variety of pricing plans as far as the price goes. There's a free version that's $0 a month if you can afford that. That's just, I think, for one person. And it says what the free plan includes there. It says up to 2 members and 2 gigabytes of storage. Then it goes up from there to $15 a month, $25 a month, and if you're a full-blown production, they'll negotiate a price to handle all your media. And camera to cloud. They also offer that so that if you have a camera that supports it, that has a Wi-Fi connection, you can have it actually send the takes when you release the take button. When you turn the camera off, it sends that file immediately to the cloud, and it's accessible to anyone who wants to review it on their iPad or has permission. It also handles security and permissions so that it can lock down your account so that only the people with two-factor authentication can log in and have access to the stuff, because security has become quite an important part in production these days, especially for anything that's going to be on television or theatrical. Nobody wants it leaking out onto the internet. So that's basically, I think, what they do, and that's basically what the pricing is. It manages your workflow, access to media, sharing and presenting, and manages your files.
And anyone who has shared media back and forth, or shared a version of a cut back and forth, and then got feedback that was either in an Excel sheet or a Word sheet with time code, and remembers, I'm going to go here, okay, what's the time code? And you're going back and forth, back and forth. The ability to get that feedback in line with the video, there's no confusion over, well, what frame are you looking at versus what frame am I looking at? That's really huge. But aside from the actual interface, there's a different perception of you as an individual, or you as a creator, when you are giving them a frame link as opposed to a Dropbox or a G Drive link. It's kind of, you're driving the nicer car or wearing the nicer shoes. It's an image thing. Technically, the upload and download speeds being blazingly fast is so nice. Really, the free version, the free account, 2 gigabytes is just enough for you to see, like, does this work? Do I like the interface? Let me kind of look around and poke. You're going to fill that up really, really quickly. If you have that $15 a month plan with 2 terabytes of storage, now you can move stuff in and out of that pretty quickly. But the big thing is, when you open up the Frame.io transfer app on your computer and you drop those media files, it will saturate your bandwidth up and down, which, when you're moving massive files around, is a major time saver. I remember, 10 or 15 years ago, sitting there and being upset because I had all this space bought on Dropbox, but Google Drive had a better upload speed. Then uploads would fail, or one of them had a better ability to deal with insecure connections and things like that. And I was like, Frame has solved a lot of those problems. So definitely check it out. I know the new Frame.io, that we actually had some folks in this community who were part of the beta for, is really exciting for production professionals. So frame.io. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. So now that we've had some time to digest Zoomtopia, what do we think about what was announced?
David?
AI for corporations. I mean, those were, I think, the 2 big takeaways for me is that Zoom is, like the rest of the world, is squarely focused on integrating AI into everything that they do. And the other big takeaway for me was that Zoom is really focused on their business enterprise education clients. There wasn't a whole lot in there that excited me as a private user. There are certainly tools that are available to me. Lots of neat stuff. There's automations, there's docs, there's calendar, there's mail, none of which I use because no one else is there. So unless you're part of an org that is really bought into the ecosystem, a lot of those things probably aren't terribly appealing to you. But if you are, it's a powerful work environment that they've created, and that AI layer on top of it that's going to help drive a lot of the integrations between those tools and really make them work seamlessly for you. It's powerful stuff.
Next question.
Håkan Fors in Stockholm, Sweden. What do you recommend to ingest SRT in a secure way? Don't want to open ports in my firewall if I can avoid it.
Jonas?
I would set up a gateway somewhere. My initial preference, of course, would be setting up in AWS. The nice thing is you don't need a GPU instance. You don't need to buy any licenses. There's a pay-as-you-go SRT gateway from Haivision who created SRT. So what you then would do is you send all your feeds up to the cloud as a caller, and then you can also receive the feeds as a caller. So that way you don't need any incoming ports opened. If you're in a very, very, very strict corporate environment where they have outbound ports also blocked, then you might still have issues. But most of the time you should be able to get through with that. There's a couple alternative also to SRT Gateway Server if you want something else. Like Kalaba Cloud is now coming into the space, Nimble Streamer, and there's a couple other Restreamer. I would use something like that. I personally like to self-host that type of infra because you have a lot of bandwidth, and I want to be able to look at the metrics. Haivision SRT Gateway Server has a lot of great metrics as well. Like you can see all the bandwidth and everything. So that is what I would use there. It's a great solution, and that is how you get through the firewall.
And Steve Uroff in the chat brings up that some firewalls allow for opening a port for traffic from a specific host or subnet. So that may be a way to narrow what you've opened up there. Next question.
David Paskin in Miami, Florida is asking, any new shows coming up in the office hours community? Shameless plug warning.
Please do tell, David.
Oh, it's fun. Thanks for asking. I'm pulling a Cochrane here. Yeah, there is a new show, in fact, inspired in part by Extra Hours, and sort of that format, the more discussion-based format. I'm really excited that we're starting a new show called The Rundown. You can learn more about it at therundown.show. It's going to be a more of a philosophical, discussion-based show about how is technology changing our world, the way we connect, the way we communicate. This for our first show is scheduled for this coming Thursday. They're going to be Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I am worried a little bit about this first show only because I have a family thing that's happening that may distract me from it, but if not this Thursday, next Thursday, but plan on this Thursday. And we're going to have a different rundown for each show, which you all can help us put together. For the first show, it looks like we're going to be talking about three different things. The first is Notebook LM from Google and the future of content creation and ingesting and processing information. How are these tools both helping and perhaps disrupting the way that we take in and share information with others? We're also going to be thinking about SpaceX and Starlink, and what does it mean to have one person with so much power in not only the fields of technology, but the one person who could get our astronauts back from the International Space Station. What does that mean? This won't be a discussion about Elon Musk specifically, but more again about the big idea. And then finally, the third topic is going to be about a fascinating talk from WWDC this past spring on what is content and the qualities of great design. Not content. What is quality and the qualities of great design. A really wonderful talk from WWDC that was just released on YouTube a few days ago. So really good stuff. Invite all of you to come join us. It's going to be on YouTube and in Mukana. I'm sorry?
What are you using to produce that?
So that's the other cool piece of it, is that because in office hours we try and use different tools. We've got a show using Memo Live, a show using VizVector, a show using what we do here. We're going to be using Ecamm to produce that show. Folks will be calling in using Ecamm for Zoom. So just like here, they'll be calling in over Zoom, producing that over in Ecamm, and able to bring in YouTube comments and also from Mukana questions and comments as well. So I invite you to join us, therundown.show. And thanks for letting me plug.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Appreciate you finding one more avenue for us to keep pushing the conversation forward. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison in Indiana is asking, do you rent your production gear and buy your post-production gear?
Good, Samuel.
Well, most of the productions that I do are relatively small compared to a lot of productions in office hours. So I own almost all of my gear, or else people that I work with own the gear. And I don't really do post-production very much. I just use DaVinci Resolve when I need to edit something.
Courtney?
Yeah, it depends on whether or not you're big enough to do both production and post-production and handle both. A lot of people, the dividing line is, it's a different company that handles post-production than handles production. At least in Hollywood, a lot of commercial production, let's say, is set up. You'll hire a production company who will handle production, and they won't necessarily have an editor online. The agency may have another editorial company or an editor that they like to use that has their own infrastructure that they want to hire. And so there's usually a dividing line between production and post-production. But on some cases, you do have it, both under the same production company. So yeah, it does make sense to buy post-production gear because the editors that you have on staff are going to want to work with a fixed type of, platform, and they don't necessarily want to be hopping around to different equipment that's available for rental. And production gear is malleable in the fact that you might want to have your basic package put together with one camera or two cameras, and then rent additional cameras and personnel and hire additional personnel to handle the size of the production if you need more than that. And for example, a grip package or something like that. If you can get a big enough production that will pay for like 20 to 30% of your production gear, go ahead and buy the equipment because you'll probably be able to amortize it off as long as it's not a lot more than you use on a day-to-day basis. If it's something that, you only have a need for 6 cameras, once every 3 years, don't buy the extra cameras, just rent them. But if you've got one camera and you've got a production coming up where you need 2 cameras and it's going to be for a week-long shoot or a 2-week shoot, it's going to be enough to amortize a good amount of the purchase of that second camera. And so that would be a wise purchase for production gear.
Yeah, there's really only 2 kinds of purchases in life or in business. You can buy tractors or you can buy big TVs. And so the more that something's used to entertain you, the more it's a big TV, and the more something can be making you money, it's your tractor. So if you can make a legitimate case for when you're going to start having that tractor make you money back, then you can put together a business case to invest in that piece of equipment. But if you don't see a clear way forward of when you're going to make money back on that investment and then start capitalizing on the asset that you've acquired, maybe you should rent it until you figure out exactly where you want to land. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is asking, what multi-LLM app or site similar to Poe does the panel prefer?
Courtney?
I use Perplexity plugin for Google Chrome, although they were recently sued in the last week or so we'll see how it pans out if they break it up or if they survive the lawsuit. But Perplexity is the one I use, and it draws from a variety of sources of models, and it gives you a pretty accurate answer, I found.
It's a little tricky, these LLM aggregators, because on one hand, you'd like to see the input, because things are moving so quickly with all of the different companies between Anthropic and between Stability and between ChatGPT. There are all these different approaches and different capabilities that emerge depending on really the month anymore. So there's a temptation to go with a Poe or go with a Perplexity. The trouble I have with it is it puts kind of one layer of obscurity between my input and what the other end is putting out. And it takes more time to do this, to say, okay, I'm going to try Claude a little bit. I'm going to try ChatGPT a little bit. I'm going to try others. To really get a feeling, though, for how is it working and how are you interacting with it, I try to be as close to the source as possible, because eventually all of those organizations that are between you and the actual engine that is giving you the answer, at some point that just becomes a man in the middle that you're either paying a premium to or maybe is not giving you exactly what you need. But for now, it's all so new. Everything's exciting. Next question.
Håkan Fors from Stockholm, Sweden is asking, could you describe what Cloudflare products and services are needed for enabling remote control of, for example, vMix with Companion?
Jonas?
The great thing is to test it out, you don't need anything. You can download Cloudflare, which is their local running daemon. And what you do then is you just start up the Cloudflare tunnel. It's going to be a free tunnel for now. So every time you start it, it's going to be a new URL, but otherwise it's going to work the same. Then if you start wanting to have your own URLs, there's two products that we use. Both of them are kind of under the Zero Trust envelope. So that is Cloudflare Access, which is like the login page that you can put in front of any web pages that you have. And then there's Cloudflare Tunnels, which allows you to connect to the remote server that way. One thing to keep in mind for that is you do need a domain. So all of those domain holders out there, I'm sure you can spare one of your domains to use for that. Otherwise, we just use .cloud domains with something in front that we use for that. Those are the two things you need. Domain is optional, but yeah, and if you like are a small production and you don't want it to be routed through a browser, I've also had a lot of people have success just using Tailscale instead. But then you do need to install something on all the devices that want to access it as well.
Next question.
Jason Robert Shaw in Sarasota, Florida is asking, other than closed captioning, what other requirements and best practices are needed to make instructional videos ADA accessible?
I'm not sure specifically on the legal front, and in some regards, you have to remember that the legal or the regulatory bodies sometimes lag behind what's ideal for the audience on the other end. And sometimes they're also going to lag behind, advances in technology. So if you have the bandwidth to do it, I would want to look down every different avenue for how can I make these videos more accessible, whether that's providing it in a different language, especially in the U.S. We have a large Spanish-speaking population. Having the ability to go into multiple languages or finding a way to have a closed caption available in a different language. Or an audio description track. There are a lot of things that you can do, and it's not like I have to produce 10 different versions of the video in order to make this happen and burn in closed captions the way it might have been years and years ago. Now they have all these different streams. They can just choose which avenue works the best for them. So I would take a look into just thinking about what is it like on the other receiving end of that. Go ahead, Mandy.
Ditto to what CJ said, and also transcripts and keyboard accessibility are important factors to that as well.
Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway is asking, Jonas, what Unix instance do you use for Companion in the cloud, and how do you network it with other cloud instances?
Go ahead, Jonas.
So we use Ubuntu for our instances just because it's what I've become accustomed to. All of our Linux-based instances run Ubuntu. Right now, I think we're still running on 22. If you ping me on Discord, Chirag and I are working on a script that lets you just launch it. But it's super simple to do. And then all you want to do is open up a couple security rules. So like just have local traffic go around and then use Cloudflare tunnels or something else or a VPN to access it. But it's super easy to do. It takes maybe 15 minutes, 5 minutes if you know what you're doing, up to an hour if you need to set up AWS as well. And then if you need to connect to local things, that's where site-to-site VPN comes in, and you kind of need to connect it that way. Tailscale, Cloudflare tunnels, traditional VPNs, all of those apply. But yeah, that's what I would do.
That's going to wrap our Q&A hour. A couple quick announcements as we get into our second hour. We've got tomorrow is our weekend Q&A show, so that runs an hour. And then Sunday is our introspection show. That's where we chew on things a little bit longer, talk on more of a philosophical level. And we also talk about office hours. So if you have questions about office hours, why do we do certain things? What are the goals? Here's what I like. Here's what I don't like. That's the place to really have that conversation. Those are live-only shows. It's not something that you're going to be able to watch later. So that's also where if you go to officehours.global/join, and you get those emails, that'll have the links on how to get into Discord and how to get into Makana. Makana is where you would watch the weekend shows. We also have our Saturday meeting. The Saturday meeting for tomorrow is the new volunteers meeting. So if you're new to office hours and you'd like to find a way for how you could help out, that's going to be where we kind of give you the nuts and bolts on how to get in on the ground floor of what volunteer opportunities are there. And that's at 9 Pacific, noon Eastern. Also, if you like what you're seeing, you can always consider supporting the show at officehours.global/donate. And if you're able to do that, we would very much appreciate it. Today on Office Hours, we're delving into a conversation about innovation, technology, and accessibility, areas where real impact's being made for millions around the world. And we're joined by Oran McAlister, who looks after client engagement at NaviLens. That's a company that's at the forefront of they're revolutionizing really how visually impaired folks navigate complex environments. It's pretty much a computer vision app for your phone that takes something that is either surrounding a QR code or similar in scale to a QR code, but very much more fully featured. It's kind of like a next generation thing. And you can see it in the MTA, the Metropolitan Transit Authority in New York. Brands like Coca-Cola, Nestle, a bunch of brands from Procter & Gamble have all embraced the technology. And that's pushing the needle towards more inclusive public spaces, better consumer experiences. So we're not going to only be looking at the technology behind NaviLens, but also hopefully have a conversation about, what does the future hold for accessible design? So anyway, Oran, welcome to Office Hours.
Hi, thank you for, good morning, and thank you for having me here today. It's great to join in the conversation, and I'm excited and looking forward to speaking to you and hearing all of your questions as well.
And I'll get the ball rolling with a couple of questions as we take a look at the technology. I mean, can you just for starters, to help give us all some perspective about NaviLens, can you tell us how the technology works, how did it get developed, and kind of what is the current state of the technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about the background of NaviLens. So we basically have NaviLens was developed based on an idea, not a new groundbreaking idea. This is a common idea that is out there. People understand that it exists. And that is, how do people who are blind or vision impaired or partially sighted, how do they be autonomous and independent in society? Now, you did mention before, about the navigation element and transport. I mean, this works in all scenarios. It can be in a hotel, it can be in a museum, an art gallery, or even out in public spaces. So our original thought was, QR codes, they're, all the rage at the moment. Why don't we think of that? But the problem with QR codes, and I'm not dissing QR codes, but the problem when it comes to people who are blind and vision impaired is that they just don't work that well. You need to know, we're all experts now on QR codes. We've been through the pandemic. We know that QR codes were added to everything to sort of enable people to be able to get that information. But you need to know where the code is. You need to get close to the code. You need to frame the code. And then you need to enter into the information from the mobile phone. This is quite problematic for people who have any kind of vision impairment. So we then decided, well, perhaps we need to create a stronger type of code, a code that can be, that sort of reduces these particular requirements. And so we spent 5 years of research and development with the University of Alicante over here in Spain. And we finally, after 5 years, we developed this NaviLens code, which is a 2D colorful code using black, cyan, magenta, and yellow. And it's a 5x5 code, and I'll be able to show you in a little bit what the code looks like. And basically, it's unique because it enables people to be able to detect it from more than 12 times the distance of a normal QR code. Detection is instantaneous, so it will automatically, once the camera finds the code, it will tell you there's a code, what that code is, and then it will allow the user to then interact with that code in whatever way is deemed best by the organization or company that licenses the code. It also can be detected within wide angles, so you don't need to be directly in front of the code, within a 160-degree angle, in fact. And also, as I mentioned before, you can detect it on the move, so you don't need to stop and find the code. It will literally, as long as the camera is facing outwards, it will find the code and it will indicate that to you. The code itself can also be read in multiple codes can be read at one time. which I know can sound maybe a little overwhelming to some people, especially when it comes to supermarket products. But then we also have our filter and locate feature as well, which is really cool. And in fact, you can actually filter and locate products based on certain requirements. So food products can be, you can search them by allergy, by intolerances, by ingredients, by also culture and religious requirements. So you can search to see if a product is kosher or if it is halal. So there's various elements. And again, it's all about that interaction with the code. It can also be detected in all kinds of lighting conditions. It doesn't need special lighting. Obviously, it needs some sort of residual lighting. Otherwise, the camera could not see the code. But I often say it's probably a good idea that you're not detecting or you're not in a place in complete darkness, because probably if you are, maybe you shouldn't really be there. One of the added benefits, now you mentioned MTA earlier, and this was actually a big box ticker for them, and that's in that our codes or our application, so it's NaviLens codes and then the mobile phone application. The application will actually detect the user's language on their mobile phone, and they will automatically translate the information. So even if the information is in Spanish, for example, if your mobile phone is set to English, you will receive the information in English. So it's an automatic translation in 37 different languages at the moment. It's ultra accurate for distance, so it's right down to the inch, or for us over here in Europe, centimeters, and Canada. I know that we're a little bit more metric. It's incredibly fast detection as well, in 0.03 seconds. And it can also be used in conjunction with tactile paving in outdoor locations. Sorry, I could keep going on and on. I'm sure you just wanted a little overview.
No, that's fine. And I actually, one of the things that excited me about the app when I opened it up to try it was I started just shooting codes on the website. And it almost seemed as if the code was aware of how big it was printed in actual space. So when I read it on my phone, it said, hey, I had one sense where there was a sign from the subway downstairs and then a sign above the subway, and it was telling me how many meters away all of the different codes were on the phone. So like even though I'm 10 inches away in reality from the screen, what I actually can see, and I was trying to bring it up, but I wasn't able to make the turn. You're actually able to have it tell you, hey, this is 10 meters away, 15 meters away. And then just by moving my phone closer, it was changing the scale. So you know, in the sense of the camera sensor, how big the actual code is. And then you're able to interpolate that into here's how far away it is in the real world.
Yeah, and actually that's something that's interesting to talk about, because we always, when we speak to organizations, companies, anybody who wishes to use our technology, it's very important to always choose the correct size of the code, because the size of the code that you choose actually indicates the distance reading. So we always recommend not to alter the size of a code after it has been created and downloaded. We always say, if you want to change the size of a code, go into our system, change the size, and download it in its new size, because this is what gives you the ultra accurate reading. But indeed, any of the codes that you can read on our website or anywhere, it would basically be reading them as the size they are in reality.
In addition to the regular code that is kind of that 5x5 grid, there's also an instance where you can place a NaviLens border kind of around the edge of a QR code. How does that differ in terms of the capability or what you're able to provide there?
Yeah, so, I mentioned before, QR codes are complicated. They're quite complicated for people with any kind of vision impairment. And so we wanted to be able to sort of use the NaviLens technology to make actual QR codes a little bit more accessible. And it's literally just using a normal QR code on our website. You can create these codes. Now, the QR code in itself is actually even more dense, so it is a little bit more accessible by just using the normal camera of the mobile phone. But we use the NaviLens technology, which is, as you pointed out, it's a border around the code. And what that will do is actually that helps people to identify where the code is. And that can be identified again from really far away and at wide angles. And it will announce to the person using our application what that is. It will say, this is a QR code for. So it also gives you that information so you know
it takes
what
that
you're
next step and
into.
actually will resolve it without the user needing to press a button or interact with anything. So, but the QR code that's in the center is still that still functions if you're not using NaviLens?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's
And
there
then
for everyone. Yeah.
And is the QR code coming back through your server in any way, or can you make, like, we are big fans of making our own QR code so that we're not needing to go through a service that could potentially be in the middle of us and our users? Could I take a QR code that I generated and then place that border around it to augment it for the NaviLens app?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in that case, it would be something that you would contact us in order for us to do that for you. Through our actual website, it does create these denser codes that we have. But absolutely, if a QR code already exists or a data matrix code, we can add that in there as well, and that can do the same job. I mean, if you'd like, I can show you just an image of where the code is being just an example of where it's being used at the moment.
We can take a look at that pretty quickly, and then we do have some questions stacking up, so I want to hop over those, and then once we're through those, we'll come back. But why don't you show us what you were going to show us right now?
Sure. It's just I'm sure you're all familiar with the TV show Dancing with the Stars. In the UK, it's called Strictly Come Dancing. Of course, we just couldn't make it nice and straightforward. But if I just wanted to show you sort of an example of how it is being used. Now, this is basically, as you can see, this is actually from X. So this is a post from X where someone pointed out that this code was being used. So anybody scanning this code, they use these a lot now on television programs, including news programs. So here in Spain, they're actually using the NaviLens accessible QR code on the news in Spain, as well as in Japan as well. And what they're doing is enabling people who enjoy these shows to be able to actually interact. And if you were to scan that with either NaviLens or with the normal camera of the mobile phone, it should take you directly into their website to provide more information about that particular event. So again, it's just an example of how the codes are being used in this way. So not only do they get used in restaurants, on menus, or in user manuals, they can be used on the digital screen to actually help people access that information that the rest of us get easier access to.
You've almost taken the QR code and spring-loaded it for someone who's not going to be able to tell if it's scanned or where do I click, and you're trying to manage all that stuff. Like, I just held my NaviLens app up to your screen share, and it identified the QR code, told me what website I was going to, and then hopped over to the website, all without needing any more interaction. So that you're able to design those experiences to suit those different users, and that's really great.
Absolutely, and through our system as well, we have. I will be able to answer some technical questions, but I'm not the most technical of people. But there is, we have a system in place as well to ensure that there is security of the information, so that people aren't using QR codes that will lead you to any sort of bad site that could actually be used to scam people. So there is an anti-scamming sort of, I don't know the correct word, but in the system to ensure that kind of doesn't happen. Because as you say, it tells you what it is, but it jumps you straight in. And that's something that's very important to us. The privacy and security of the users of our technology is very, very important.
All right, let's we'll hop back to some panel discussion in a little bit. But for now, why don't we get to a few of the questions? Go ahead, Alexander.
First question is coming from Douglas Carmichael. Can the NaviLens technology be applied to other contexts as well as like helping those on the autism spectrum adjust to independently navigating their environment?
That's actually a really great question, and that was something that came about in the very first the beginnings of NaviLens. Of course, as part of we don't just create an application and put it out in the public and expect people to use it. We needed to do our testing. And we did test it, and a lot of the feedback was this is great. This is from people who are blind and vision impaired. They said, this is great, that we love that technology is working to help us, but we really feel that it's important to allow other people to be able to use the technology as well in certain ways to make it more diverse. These particular users of our technology, who they feel that even though the technology was made and created for them, they felt that it slightly marginalized them yet again, that it was only for them. So we then created NaviLens Go, which is a second application. So NaviLens is a text-to-speech, so it's an audible version. So all information is provided audibly. And then we have NaviLens Go, which can actually provide, you can add sign language videos. So for people who have hearing impairments, you can add those, that kind of information. There are pictograms that can be added as well. Easy to read text. So if it's a complicated text, you can add easy to read text then this works for people who are neurodivergent or people with cognitive impairments. There's also the ability to add in additional information for wheelchair users to help people who have certain mobility access requirements. So you can add additional information in there. There's even a content for kids element as well. So you can add more child-friendly information. This would be great maybe in a museum or something. So we did try and incorporate this for everyone. But NaviLens Go is all about being there for everyone. So it can be used by people who have low vision, but also people who are fully sighted. And again, the information is then translated into all different languages, but you have numerous settings within there to play around with the information on how you would like it to be. So we have factored that in trying to work for people with other impairments or other needs.
Next question.
Laura Thompson in Beaumont, Texas is asking, can you talk about the security of adding the NaviLens to a standard QR code? Is there a risk of something getting added unknowingly?
So because you create these codes through our system. And again, I did mention before, I'm not overly, a lot of the background work that goes on in this, in the tech level, I'm not entirely sure, but I do know that if you go onto our website, it gives you all the information to ensure that it's telling you that those QR codes that are being used there are checked and that they are safe. The ones that are created on our website are always safe. They can only be used from this site that we have pre-approved and that we know that is secure. And if that's why I said then as well that to CJ that if you wanted to add your own QR code, that's something that we need to work on with you as well to ensure security. It is very important to us.
Yeah, we talked about the thought of I'm making this up, but if you're spring loading that QR code and it just jumps to the site without that user interaction, security becomes very important. I know it was a big deal. I think when the iPhone first started reading QR codes in the native camera app, there was no way to know where it was going. It was just open the QR link. Now you can long press and actually see where it's going. There's also go ahead.
No, go ahead. See, I know it was just to add as well. When companies do use our codes, they're used in very specific ways. They're not randomly placed on signs on the street. These would be used sort of on product packaging or within a facility or within an educational building where people are using these codes for those particular reasons. So I can understand that there would be concern, but there is a certain element of understanding as well, just to be careful with any QR codes in general, but that is something that we do take very seriously, and we always make sure we have that level of security in there, and particularly with the NaviLens codes themselves. We went through the whole process of getting the ISO 27001, the security approval, to make sure that all information is safe and secure, so that when people do scan a NaviLens code, all of the information and details in there have been pre-secured. Also, the users, we never ask, when someone downloads their application, we never ask for your name, your email address. We don't ask for any information from you. You simply allow access to the camera and start scanning.
Courtney, you had something to throw in there?
Just a couple of technical questions to help me understand a little bit how this system works. It's a 5x5 matrix of these colored square blocks that has to be a specific size to help navigation with the phone lens. Is the data contained in the Navi code independently derived in the application itself, or is it just an index number into a database online in the cloud? So do you have to maintain a cloud connection to use it, or can it be used locally on a phone without a data connection? If you've lost a data connection, or let's say you're in the underground in the subway where you don't have a good data connection, or there's not an access point nearby, does it have to maintain a data connection in order to resolve what that Navi code means, or is it self-contained in the code itself?
Yeah, okay. So this is one of those questions where I'm going to give you one of these sort of double answers. In a way, yes, you do need some sort of cell coverage or Wi-Fi in order to get started with NaviLens in these systems, particularly with real-time information. So if you're using a transport system and you want to access what time is the next train coming, you would need internet access to be able to ensure you're getting the real-time information. Now, all the information is held within our platform, and then it's held within the cloud as well. But we do have a system in place for this possibility, because obviously with a lot of transport systems, and if we look at the subway system in New York as a good example, when you go underground, there's a good chance you're going to lose some sort of signal and coverage. We have a safety system, not a safety, but we have a system in place that any codes that are in a sort of a Wi-Fi, no Wi-Fi or no cell coverage zone, we can actually create those codes as listed as offline. And what that means is that when you scan any other code within that facility, it will automatically download the information from that code that is without coverage into the application, so that when you scan it without any coverage, you will get that information. But it needs to be static information, because if it is real-time information, you need that, as with anything, to access real-time information, you need some sort of coverage. But we do have a system in place, because we know, again, that's an area that can be quite problematic. And not just in underground systems, but even in some large buildings, not all locations have great Wi-Fi or that they have coverage. And also if you're, I don't know, we're getting a lot of interest from parks at the moment, so that people could use our codes to go on walks, nature walks. Obviously, the further you go out into the wild, the lower the opportunity probably is of using any kind of cellular coverage. But we do have a system in place, yeah.
So it can, once it knows where you are at a particular building or something, it can buffer a certain amount of static information in the phone itself that you can use once you get away. The other question is, as far as application, let's say if you put a Navicode on the front of a bus to indicate the bus route and where it's going, well, a lot of times those buses change routes en route. They'll have an indicator, usually an LED indicator. Is there a RGB LED matrix that you can build to put on a bus that can change the Navicode based on the bus's location or route? That can be
absolutely
dynamically changed, on the fly.
Yeah, and we're doing this currently in New York as well on their bus system. We can link into the central system. So each of those buses would have a particular sort of registration number, and those numbers are linked into their central system. So it's not like the olden days where you had to crank up, where your destination was. Everything's all linked into a central system, and using an API, we can actually link into that system. And so if that bus changes, okay, today it's route number 12, but tomorrow it's route 19, that bus is allocated that route, and so it would be already in the system. So by linking our NaviLens code into that system, you can access that real-time information. And it's actually a sort of a very secure method. I'm based in Valencia here in Spain, and we had a visitor who is she's an influencer or a content creator, I think is the correct use of the word. And she came to Valencia and wanted to do a video in front of a bus stop that uses, because all the buses here in Valencia have the NaviLens code. And when we arrived at the bus stop, she didn't notice, but I did notice that the digital display was not working. And when I told her that, but she scanned the code and she was getting that real-time information, she was actually blown away by the fact that her, as a blind person, was actually able to access information that those of us sighted folks could not access in the moment. So yes, we have a system that links in, that gives you that up-to-date information right up to the minute. And if there are delays, it will inform you of that. And even I think, I'm sure I can talk about it. We've so many NDAs, I don't want to give away too much, but I know that on a lot of systems, they actually also tell you how many stops away. And we also recommend, in some cases, actually putting an additional code onto the door of the bus. Because, the old adage, you wait for 20 minutes for the number 19 bus, and then all of a sudden 3 buses arrive at one time, just to make sure you're getting onto the correct bus, that bus that you're getting onto. But yeah, it's something that we do take very seriously, making sure that the real information is provided and that people get access to accurate information.
And that's a very important application, because the vision impaired are frequently, have to use public transportation to get around. So that's a good application of it.
it was the first area we looked at because, transport really is the connection for so many people, not only to go about your daily business, like going to the supermarket, going to the doctors, going to, I don't know, wherever you needed to go to, but it also helps you sustain that connection. It enables you to find employment, sustain employment, and also maintain that family connection. We all know, especially, I'm not here to trash the pandemic, but I think we all understand the importance of having friends and family after that particular period. So we knew that transport was one area. That was our first port of call that we wanted to deal with. And that's something where here in Spain in particular, I suppose NaviLens is a Spanish company, but it has exploded. I don't think you can go to any city or large town now in Spain without finding NaviLens attached to either the tram system, bus system, or metro system, and also within the train system as well. So that was very important to make sure we get that right. Thank you, Courtney, for the question.
Yeah, next question.
This one's from Mandy Van Cleve in Monroe, Ohio. Are there any tactile components typically added to the NaviLens codes that are within reach?
So tactile components with the NaviLens itself, we don't actually print the final code. That would be down to the company that wishes to lease or use our technology. And quite often what they do is, and we don't claim to replace any other assistive techniques that are out there, such as tactile, braille, or any other technology. We work in harmony with them. So it would be down to the company themselves when they're creating that final printed out element of the code, be it put next to tactile markings, or if it's being created so that it actually has the tactile markings on it. That is something that can be done by the company themselves. We do have a wayfinding solution that works with tactile paving. So with tactile paving, it's been a while since I've been in the US, so but I'm sure it's pretty much a similar scenario, that you have the straight line tactile paving tends to be for indicating a direction. You go in that direction, it keeps a straight line, it's a safe line. And then they're usually over here, anyway, I know in Spain and in the UK, it's a blister bubble paving type
like a
location. Yeah, and it's crosswalks, but it's also in decision-making points, especially in transport systems. So it's like, make a decision here. You need to go straight forward, turn left, or turn right. But therein lies a problem for people who are blind or partially sighted. What decision do I have to make? So what we do is we work with that tactile system so that depending on the angle that the user arrives at the code, it will provide contextual information. So if you're arriving from, let's say, from the bottom to the code, it would say turn left for platforms 1 to 3, straight ahead for platform 4, turn right for platforms 5 to 10. But if you arrive from the left, it would say turn right for the exit, turn left for platform 4, straight ahead for platforms 5 to 10, and turn back for platforms 1 to 3. So it's a system that we have in place to sort of work in conjunction with tactile paving. And in fact, we have a project now going on in Belfast, Northern Ireland, where I am from originally. I'm going there this week. They've put the implementation in. In fact, they put in tactile paving so that they could use our system. They weren't going to put in tactile paving, which was very naughty. They had a beautiful new floor, beautifully placed, but they've put it in because they want that anyone arriving into the station can scan that first code, and on the application, they will be provided with every destination within the building. And you choose, okay, I want to go to platform 2. And it will then kick into a wayfinding solution using there's visual marking, so you have an arrow that's pointing in the direction, but you also have audible spoken information as well as sounds and also haptics. So the phone will vibrate as well as you get close to or further away from codes. And it will direct you through a series of codes throughout the station until you arrive to your destination.
Go ahead, Mandy. Oh, can't hear you, Mandy.
Oh.
I really appreciate the fact that having a tactile surface is not necessary with NaviLens. That's what sets it apart from the QR codes. And I worked at an agency where they plan to use NaviLens on their manufacturing machines, which would link to special instructions for using the machines. And I just thought that was an absolutely brilliant use of the product.
Yeah,
thank you, Mandy.
It sounds like it's instead of thinking of it as a static thing where this particular shape or this particular code is embedding some sort of information. It's more like this individual code is unique and it's programmed so that it can be contextual, and then use all those other inferences about, okay, where is it in the frame? Am I below it? Am I above? Is it far away? Is it close? To actually give the more rich information to whoever is the user.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an important way to kind of look at it as well. And also in that regard, it can be used in so many different ways. As I mentioned before, transport was huge. Products kind of came as part of Kellogg's wanted to do something for World Sight Day. They wanted to create one packaging with a NaviLens code. And then from the feedback from that, it just blew up. And it's now in all of their products in Europe and in the UK. We're working on it in the US. I know it's currently on 4 different products in the US. But my point being is that after that, people were saying, wait a minute, but this could be used, as you say, in a factory, in somewhere where there is machinery. It can be used, for safety reasons, to allow people to be able to understand what something is before they get there. It provides information, inside buildings, just allows people, again, that ability to kind of, even just orientation, knowing where you are in this moment. There's no, making sure you don't go into a dead end. There's so many sort of ways of using it, and that was important for us then, and one of the reasons why we created our free kits. A lot of educational facilities are using these. Are free kits of pre-programmed codes that are common elements and places within buildings. So you have like girls' bath for a school, for example, girls' bathroom, boys' bathroom. You even have, the gender neutral bathroom if required. You have emergency exit, printers, power outlets. You even have the generic rooms 1 to 50, I believe, are in there as well. So it's something that can be used in all these facilities. And then we started creating them as well for places like medical facilities, so common areas within, health centers and medical centers, also in libraries, in associations, so organizations that work with people who are blind and vision impaired. They can use these pre-programmed codes within their facilities. And as well, then finally, I'm forgetting. So events also, because I know there are a lot of conferences that are held to provide support for people who are blind or vision impaired. And then finally, and this is the one I'm most excited about, and this is coming out in a few weeks, a bathroom kit. I don't know if most of us who are sighted people, we take it for granted. We go into a bathroom, we know where everything is. For people who are blind or vision impaired, they have to walk into a bathroom and they have to use their hands quite often to find the elements within bathrooms, which is not a pleasant experience, and I'm sure you can imagine. So that's something I'm excited about, is going to come out, and these can be used anywhere, from hospitals to hotels to theme parks to anywhere. You put them in their bathrooms so that when someone goes in there, they can find all of those facilities. They can find, where is the stall, where is the hand wash, where is the soap, are they towel dryers, are they paper towels, are they electric, all of these elements, so that experience becomes a little bit more, I don't know, nice, for want of a better word.
Let's move on to the next question.
Next question is from Jason Robertshaw in Sarasota, Florida. These remind me of Microsoft's deprecated tags. Are NaviLens codes open source or proprietary?
You might need to explain that question a little bit more to me.
Is this something that I'm not 100% sure of the tag technology from Microsoft, but the question was, is there any sort of open source documentation that others can use to implement NaviLens, or is all of it sounds like from some of the descriptions that you were having earlier that in order to use NaviLens, it has to, come through your company first before it goes out. It's not something that anyone could, adopt
No.
and fork off of what you're working on.
No, not at all. To be able to, these free codes anyone can use. You can use them in any facility. You cannot alter them. You cannot do anything to them. But in order to have the codes where you can create them for your facility, you can create them to be tailor-made for your facility, your elements within your facility, you would need to have the NaviLens access to be able to go in, create the codes, add that information. In order to do that, you need to come through NaviLens. But one of the things is that all codes, when created, are open to the public. Anyone can scan these codes. There are no codes for one company that only their company employees can scan. All codes need to be accessible, because that's the whole point, that they are available for people who are blind and partially sighted. So why else have them out there if it's not for them? It shouldn't be just for your own people to be able to access that information. So everything should be, all information should be public anyway. So what I'm saying is that when you are adding information, it should never be private information that you're adding in there. You don't want to put in your bank account details into a NaviLens code, because why would you do that? It should be information that is already available to people who are sighted. Someone did mention one time, oh, I would love one on my name tag, but what if I lose my name tag? Someone can find my name through the NaviLens code. I'm like, yeah, but they can read it on your name tag anyway. So it's not anything that isn't meant to be publicly available. I don't know if that answers the question, and I do apologize if I've...
No, that's fine. To me, it sounds like, Microsoft with tags, it was kind of similar to a QR code in functionality, but it was their version, and you had to use Microsoft in order to make it, and that was one of the downfalls. But there's a question of how much value are you adding over a traditional QR code? With the infrastructure that NaviLens sounds like NaviLens is providing, in terms of contextual basis, in terms of needing the funds to support the app to make sure that it can be maintained and read if hundreds and thousands and millions of people are going to count on it. It needs to be supported in that way. And if you're giving it, to me, if any company's giving enough value to a service, then they can have I think then it's their right to have that ability to have it be proprietary and to capitalize on it, so that then they can reinvest in continuing to make the technology better. One of the things about QR codes that made them catch on so quickly, and that people often laud them for, is that it was open source and nobody was trying to make money on it, but it's a very mathematical approach, right? They're encoding data into these blocks, into text, and hey, that's it. It's not like with a QR code, there's not the requirement to maintain an infrastructure around it. So I think it's a slightly different way to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's the system that it is, and by using our system, it does increase that security element, so that our codes cannot be manipulated. People cannot create anything that would take someone to the wrong location. Everything needs to be done through our system. So it's mainly all about security in a way. But one other thing we do provide, and this is free for our users, is we do create free personal codes that people can use in their own homes, so that they can program their own codes, and they can indicate things in the kitchen, like, I don't know, salt and pepper, sugar, elements like that. But some other users even add it to things like plants with feeding instructions. Some add it to their luggage, so when they're traveling. One lady actually adds it to her remote control, so because her husband never puts the remote control back in the correct place, which I suppose many people have probably had that issue. But so we do try to allow the people who use our technology to be able to have their own way of using it as well, without having to go through a company and pay for these things. We don't want the end user to pay for anything.
Let's move on to the next question.
Mandy Van Cleve in Monroe, Ohio is asking, what are some solutions used with NaviLens where low light is a concern?
Well, so in theory, our codes should work perfectly well in either high light or low light. Of course, there needs to be some sort of residual lighting for the application to be able to detect the code. We have always highlighted to museums, art galleries, places where you can find yourself in sort of darker areas. We've always explained that they don't need any special lighting for these codes. the codes should work. I know that here in my own apartment, I was testing out the technology. This was way in my early days, and I wanted to test it. And I put one code at the end of my apartment. My apartment's not that big. It's about 60 feet, about 20 meters in length. And I was able to detect the code through a dark hallway right at the very other end of my apartment. And I was actually hanging off the balcony, and I was still detecting the code. My point being is that there shouldn't really be any issues. Obviously, if a code is in somewhere where the lighting is far too low to be able to see it, that would, I don't know, I'm not being patronizing, but it would probably indicate to me that you're in a place that maybe people should not be. If you're in a room or in a building where there is no lighting, then I would probably try and find the exit as soon as possible, because I imagine that you maybe shouldn't be in there. There are requirements, though. We always do recommend, well, we tell you, do not use shiny materials when creating the codes. So if you want to laminate the codes, don't use a shiny laminate, use a matte laminate, because obviously shiny materials can reflect artificial light or natural light, and it can affect the codes. So there are elements like that that we would be more concerned about as far as lighting is concerned, is just to make sure that the codes themselves have a matte finish. And this is something that can be, it can be problematic, and something that we always insist that organizations do.
Courtney, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, on this very question is, what if you're in a club, let's say, that has red lighting on the bathroom doors, colored lighting? How is colored lighting affected? And is there a possible way for the application, if you know you're going to be in a jazz club or something where they're going to have colored lighting or low lighting, to flash the strobe on the phone to give you a burst of white light so it could see the codes and interpret them correctly? Is that a possible mode that the app could employ?
As far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, there is a way that you can actually activate the light from within. But I want to check on that, because you mentioned about the different colored light being used in those in certain facilities, which can be true, not only in clubs, which of course we all love to go to, but maybe even places like museums or aquariums where the lighting is kind of a little bit more created to be a bit more aesthetic for that particular venue. That's something I'd like to look into a bit more. Actually, I want to find out if we tested that. So it is quite a good question that I unfortunately can't give you the answer to in this particular moment in time. But as far as I'm aware, and I'm just going to open the application while I'm talking to you, there is a way of being able to activate a light. And if not, Courtney, you might just have given me an idea that I can go back to my company and say to them.
A new version of the app.
Yeah, I just took a peek into the settings, and it looks like you can, there's a flash mode that you can have it be automatically on when you launch the app, or have it react to ambient light.
So if there's not enough light for it to interpolate, it'll activate you can set it to activate the flash. And,
there you go. You see, I think CJ secretly works for NaviLens. He's here to help me in these tricky moments. Sorry, I'll be honest. There's a lot of ways that the technology works, and I think CJ's showing there now where it is. There's so many different ways, because it needs to be. You need to be able to personalize the application to what you need. We do have a default setting of, these are all the settings, this is how it is. But you can actually go in, you can change the voice. If you don't want to listen to that, English-speaking voice, you can actually choose different American accented voices. You can even choose Moira from Ireland, which is what I do. And other, so you can actually go in and personalize it, make it a little bit more ideal for you. And what we also find is a lot of people who are blind and vision impaired have a higher capacity, again, not patronizing, but they have a higher capacity to listen to text in a faster way. So they can go in and increase the speed of the text being read to them.
And is it voice operated so that you can tell it your choice verbally? Rather than having to touch something on the touch screen on the app?
No, at the moment it is, you can open the app through Siri or whatever other, Google or whatever other way you open up elements on your mobile devices. But once you're in there, no, for the moment it's not voice activated, but you can use it with screen readers and voiceover. So if people have that activated on their mobile phone, they can they can interact with the codes in that way by accessing information and accessing links to more information, accessing files that are placed within the code.
Next question.
I like that idea also.
From Rion Smith in Trinidad, West Indies, can Apple Vision or MetaQuest scan these codes from the headset and then display info?
That is a great question. So this is, of course, with the development of these new smart glasses and headsets, this is something that's very important for me. And I remember when I first started with NaviLens, I said, oh, can we use an external camera so that people don't need to use the mobile device, have it in hand, or have it need to be facing outwards. This is somewhere where we're working a lot. We're working with a lot of companies to try and make sure that we are integrated with all of these new technologies that are being used in order to help people. One of the, I know that Meta is another one that's a big one at the moment, the Ray-Ban glasses. These are elements that we are working towards being able to be integrated easily with. We're working currently with ARX or ARX. It's a headset that has an external camera, and it again allows you, without having the mobile phone out in public, you're able to interact with the codes using that device.
It's one of those exciting things that because I think there was an interview with someone on your leadership team who spoke about their first interaction with NaviLens, and it was actually a beta project where they had it into Google Glass, where it was seeing the world around them. And I understand that was maybe a skunkworks early thing, but that was also 6 or 7 years ago. Now, like you can see, Jason's got the Apple Vision on, but also with the Meta Ray-Bans and some more of these more low profile solutions that aren't maybe as conspicuous. As you're walking around, having it be able to interpret the world around you and help guide you without needing to, hold the phone the whole time, I think is probably a pretty exciting way forward.
Yeah, one of the things, because we understand that safety is really important for us. And unfortunately, there are people out there that would take advantage of people who are maybe slightly vulnerable in certain situations. And that's why we kind of want to do this. We do recommend currently, we do say, again, you don't need to hold the phone out in front of you. It doesn't need to be like this. You can hold the phone to your chest and move your body. So you can move slightly left to the right. It means that you have the phone in a much safer location. I know that some of our users carry it in a see-through pouch around their neck. Others have like a mobile phone case that when it has a clip on the back, so you can actually clip it to your bag or something. Look, is it completely ideal? No. This is something that we're really concerned about, something we're definitely going to work on, because it is a big change and a big development. And as mentioned before, yes, NaviLens is a company that does sell, well, we license the technology. There is money to be made from it. But I can assure you from my experience from working with NaviLens is the majority of that money is actually reinvested in how can we improve this? Okay, what's working that we need to work with? Okay, let's focus on AI. What's happening with that? How do we interact with that at the moment? What do we need to think about? So we're constantly trying to ensure. I think a lot of people have felt that things have come and gone. These advanced technologies, these assistive technologies have come, they've promised something, and then the blind and vision impaired community get excited and think this is great, this is going to improve, and then nothing happens, nothing changes, and eventually it kind of maybe disappears. And this is something that we don't want to happen. That's why we're constantly, what's happening? What do we need to do? Like, again, just a little segue into another thing, but we've been working with products, but of course, one of the big questions that was coming up with a lot of products is, what about expiry dates on consumables and medications? And we were like, okay, well, how do we do that? Because it would be very expensive, for want of a better way of describing it, to be using a new NaviLens codes on products, like having to change the NaviLens code every day on a product that's produced every day, because every day the expiry date will change. It just doesn't work. So we've developed a new system where using either a QR code or a data matrix code, I don't know if I can hold that up there so you can see, next to the NaviLens code, the data matrix code, which would either be very, very low cost or free. And then you have the NaviLens code. So that's the same code that will be on every single packet of this medication here in Spain. But if you scan both of those together, it will, using the data matrix, it will provide you with that use by date. So any consumables now will be able to use that system in order to allow people to know if their important medication in their cupboard is in fact still in date, or again, if those products in your fridge are to be thrown out or to be kept. So, we're still, we listen to our users. That's part of my job. I speak quite often with the users of our technology. We have conversations, we have group meetings, because I want to know, what do you need? How can we take that then? Can we do that? So a lot of the times we're restricted by what technology can do. But as soon as there's a new iPhone or a new, whatever phone out there, we get it and we're like, right, what's so special about this one? And what can we do to make sure that the user is getting the best out of this technology?
And you need, like, with the when the new Android flip phones are coming out, you want to say, okay, now this is the shirt that we recommend, so you can clip it right to the pocket there with it in between. Jason, I think you've got the vision on. So are you taking a look at the app now?
The minute I saw this question, I popped up and grabbed it. So NaviLens does work on Vision Pro. I'm not sure if the camera is enabled. I can't both simultaneously mirror and see if the camera will allow me to show. But the app itself has been approved by the developer to work on Vision Pro. And
so
as
this
far
is
as
the iPad version. This is the iPad app, but running within the Vision.
This is the iPhone version. That was the one that was released for use. And yeah,
that's great.
But as long as the camera is enabled, which is probably one more step for the developer, it should be good.
Okay, that's amazing. Thank you for that, Jason. That I love that. That was brilliant.
We're in the weeds here. We love it. We really dig in. It's the office hours. It's the office hours way.
I love it. Great.
You had mentioned something about AI in your last answer, and so that actually really piqued my interest because we actually have a question about that coming right up. Alexander?
Yeah, this one's from Steve Yoroff in Madison, Wisconsin. Smartphones with AI abilities are gaining the ability to audibly describe the camera's input, read text, etc. How will NaviLens stay relevant against this technology?
I mean, technology is changing. AI, I brought this up with our management quite recently, and I said, I think we need to have conversations about this. Like, how is NaviLens not necessarily going to compete with the AI, but how are we going to be able to interact with it? How are we going to be able to work alongside it? Because it is something that is developing and something that is growing. One of the responses I got was that from the feedback and the research that we've been doing is that although AI are making leaps and bounds and they're taking accessibility very, very seriously, there is still a bit of an issue with certain things not being accurate. I'm not making a blanket sort of statement there. I do know that I had a conversation with a blind user of our technology who was on holiday, and they were in a bar and they were playing around with one of the AI apps. I don't want to say which one it was. In fact, I don't remember, so it doesn't matter. But he was looking around, getting descriptions of what was in the background, and it told him that there were an elderly couple sitting at a table nearby. And this couple came to him and said, we just overheard, I hope you don't mind, but your technology just described us as elderly and we're in our late 40s. So we're not sure we like, and we're not sure it's quite accurate. And I'm just giving you a little example. It is something we're watching. It is something that we're going to be taking seriously. But, accuracy is one of the things about NaviLens. We can pinpoint you to the centimeter from where you are to that particular NaviLens code. We have systems to make you arrive to the exact location of something. The information you receive is exactly the information that those of us who are sighted get. So accuracy is very, very, very important for us. So we're not sort of ignoring AI. We're very much watching it and making sure that as soon as we can start working alongside of that, then we will. But for the moment, we're not overly concerned, but we do hear a lot of good things about, people being able to read information from situations where there is no other way of accessing that information. So, there are so many benefits. It is great. But for the moment, we're focused on what we're focused on, and we're focused on getting our technology to be doing what it's doing, staying relevant for the moment, of course, and we will make sure that whatever changes come, we're going to keep ourselves relevant and make sure that we do stay up there with the rest of the other competitive technologies.
Right, because as of today, it's very early days with AI, and AI is really, it's hyper-powered pattern recognition, and it does a fairly good job. But when you are depending on that as your only way of getting information, pretty good isn't going to hack it. You need to have a little bit more assuredness, and that's where your NaviLens code is going to be much more objective. It's not going to try and interpret a bunch of things and maybe give you false information. You can see, though, from a trajectory point of view, how integrating that sort of AI pattern recognition and then, taking, hey, I have 80% certainty that this is the situation that is next to the NaviLens code. You can almost treat it like that data matrix code that was telling you an expiration date. It's one more piece of information that informs the kind of, or I guess allows you to make inferences about the situation and deliver that message to your users. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
And Jason, you had another thing to throw in.
I'm gonna summarize this really quickly. I don't know about any of you, but I love ChatGPT, and I will not trust my life to it. Okay, just a little bit early for that.
This is the thing. I love it also. And believe you me, when I need to write something really super formal for something, I like to go in there and ask for advice from ChatGPT, but I never take it as it is written. I think that it is going to get there. The world is going in that direction. We can't stop it. We're heading that way. But, I think you're right. There's just something we need to...
It's going to be an exciting couple of years going forward, for certain. Let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, I've seen NaviLens used on math flashcards. Have you seen any useful educational use cases? And there's a Perkins.org link there.
Well, Douglas, because I know the person who created those flashcards. I believe his name is Tim. And I think really... I would love to give more precise examples, but I just think that to be able to use NaviLens, the limitations are just basically the limitations of your imagination. I think that NaviLens could be applied to anything and everything. One of our a Guide Dog Association in the UK, he said to me, "I love playing poker. Could I add these NaviLens codes to a deck of cards?" I'm like, "Why not?" And he's like, "That way I don't need to rely on a friend assisting me." And there's so many ways, but educationally, I'm going down the gambling route. But educationally, there's so many ways. Students could get access to information. Again, they could get access to information that is within a book. Teachers can add, exercises and assignments to a particular NaviLens code. They can update it weekly. You can give every student one code and that put it on a book, and the teacher can update that code every week and say, "This is what I need you to do this week. This is what I need you to do." And every time they scan the code, they get the up-to-date information. There's so many ways that it can be used in so many different facilities that it would be impossible to give even any other good examples. Where we're growing now is more on the cultural side, yes, within education as well, because I think people are finding that they can use more for navigation purposes and orientation around the schools themselves. But, what with museums, music concerts, theatres, concert venues, even our codes are being used in a music festival up in Scotland. I just think there's so many uses that it would be impossible to give any specific uses, but it's just the imagination is everything. Name something and you could probably make it a little bit more accessible using NaviLens in a number of different ways. Was that a very political answer to that question? Sorry.
No, that was perfect. It's a very exciting future that we've got in front of us, and it's a pleasure. And I guess the right way to say it would be it's very encouraging that folks like you and the team at NaviLens exist who are helping us, push the world forward to a better place. What's the best? What's the place for people to find more information if they're curious about NaviLens? How should they reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on our website, we have information there about some of the project, what NaviLens is, how it works, which is www.navilens, navilens.com. We also have our own YouTube channel, which is actually quite cool because you have videos in, I think it's like 5 or 6 different languages, but you have a lot of videos in there in English. You might see me crop up in a few of them. Please forgive me. I am not a presenter. I am not very good at those kind of things, but it shows you how NaviLens can be used in different ways. But we also add a bit of the human context of people who are actually out showing us their experience of finding a product for the first time in a supermarket. I mean, that's something that people who are blind and vision impaired couldn't do before. And so there's videos there, lots of information. Or email me. It's oran.mcalister@navilens.com. If you have any questions, please just feel free to get in touch. And that's oran.mcalister. But CJ and the team, I'm sure you can share it with anyone who would like to sort of get in contact with me to ask any more questions. Always here to help. We're at your service. It's what we want to do. And these new ideas, Courtney, I want us to connect because you definitely have some great ideas that I want to talk to you a little bit more about.
Courtney always has great ideas. It's the best.
Oran again, box, Courtney, that's
Oran, again, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for the work you and your team are doing. It's very exciting. It's just incredible technology and infrastructure, and that's what we're all about on Fridays. Also, thanks to our panel for being here for the first and the second hours. I like to say no one of us is as smart as all of us, and we're enriched every single day by the experience that everybody just comes and shares. It's awesome. Also, thank you to the back-end crew. There's a small village that lights up every day all over the world, makes this show run. Volunteers working all the time, not just during the show, but also around the show to keep us organized and moving forward. And finally, thank you to the producers for asking such great questions. It's impossible to do the show without your questions, and you bring a perspective that allows you to approach a situation that none of us would ever, and that's what makes us all better and keeps us pushing forward. If you like what we're doing here, you can always consider supporting us at officehours.global/donate, and we'll wrap with our Slawlek traversal as we always do. If we had to walk around to all the people that we asked questions and answered questions of today and go one by one, we're all going to walk around, we'd end up going 67,000 miles. That's 107,000 kilometers, which is 528 million bananas for scale. All right, we'll see you in After Hours. Oran, that was great. Thank you.
No,
well done, Oran.
You. Sorry, I didn't say thank you then, but thank you so much, guys. You were amazing, and I love that all the questions. It freaks me out sometimes because I'm like, oh my god, nothing too technical, but I don't know. I do my best, and thank you for the opportunity.
There's not a I wouldn't, and thank you again to Laura Thompson, who was huge in getting all this set up today. I would have no idea that this even existed, and I think there's such great potential for this technology that it's just, I feel like I'm cutting edge. I love it.
No, it's really cool. And yeah, there is a big movement in the US at the moment. I'm very excited for it. We're sort of popping up here, there, and everywhere, but there's even places that are going, we're going to create like NaviLens sort of cities. So it's a big movement there. It's just
part of our federal